Jen, the White House recently came out with its budget proposal for the DoD. What's the big number there?
So this is the fiscal year 2023 budget request from the White House, and this is specifically for the Pentagon. It's $773 billion. That's a 4% boost from last year's budget request.
And you cover ground warfare. What is the Army itself getting?
So the Army's budget is $178 billion, and that's $163 billion in the base budget. And in addition to that, there is $15 billion carved out for overseas operations. Now that's still in the base budget, but this is specifically just to show that the Army is putting money towards overseas operations. The Defense Department and Congress decided to get rid of Overseas Operations Contingency Accounts, or OCO accounts, which paid for unpredicted operations overseas. But that was kind of turning into a little bit of a slush fund over time. And so now whatever the Army has to pay for things is going to be coming out of the base budget.
And a big priority for the Army, regardless of everything going on, is still modernization. What are we looking at there?
So the modernization accounts have been preserved. Now, a year ago, there was a question of whether we would start to see some cuts or some slowing down of programs in the modernization accounts because we didn't really know where these budget top lines were going. But it seems that the Army has found a way yet again to preserve all of their priority programs, such as long-range precision fires, next generation combat vehicle, future vertical lift. There's quite a few programs that we're expecting to see come online as initial fieldings in FY23, including the Precision Strike Missile, as well as a hypersonic ground-launched weapon capability.
You mentioned overseas operations and the unpredictability, especially right now. What have they allocated for that? I believe deterring Russia is a big part of it.
Yeah, so the Army is actually getting a pretty decent chunk of the European Deterrence Initiative funding, which is funding carved out to help with the reassurance of our NATO allies and to deter Russia in Europe. They're getting totally across the board for the Pentagon is $4.2 billion.
And you mentioned that Congress is still going to get a go at it. Do you think they might insert some money for Ukraine and for?
Oh, I mean, I absolutely would think so, and we're already seeing that happen. In the FY22 omnibus spending bill included a large sum of money to help Ukraine, both in terms of providing weapons, but also to help, say the Army pay for some of the deployments of our troops that we have sent to Europe to reassure our allies.
And modernization is a big thing, getting new equipment, new systems, the nice stuff coming in. Are any of the legacy systems being slowed down in terms of acquisition?
So that's the other side of the card in terms of being able to preserve your modernization priorities. The Army really has had to take a look at where they are with their current fleet, whether every system needs to be upgraded. Maybe they can slow the procurement of certain systems. So the Army is slow rolling the procurement of some Abrams tanks, Stryker combat vehicles, Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, as well as the Paladin improved management howitzer, PIM howitzer. And so all of those are seeing a little bit of a cut, but it really is to preserve the modernization priority. In order to make these new systems come online, we can't just keep throwing money into these older systems. We have to modernize now.
Jen, there was a little bit of a surprise with the end strength. That's the number of people in the Army. What's that number?
In FY22, we had 485,000 troops approved in the active force, and that is going to drop in FY23 to 473,000. Now, this is only going to be a temporary drop. The Army said this is not budget driven. It's really an issue of handling the balance of recruiting really quality talent to the force. And so they will continue to work on improving recruitment numbers over the next 5 years or so with the hope to be able to restore that end strength number to 485,000 in the active force. Now, the Army National Guard is staying at 336,000. That's the same as FY22. That's going to be steady, as well as the Army Reserve, which is 189,500.
Jen, thank you for coming on. You got a lot on your hands with all those numbers and even more numbers. We're going to be talking with Leo Shane, our Capitol Hill Bureau Chief, who's going to go through the top line budget.
So the White House's defense budget for fiscal 2023 is $773 billion. That's a 4% increase from what they had in fiscal 2022. And if it's approved, It's almost a 10% increase from 2 years ago. So it's a really big number, but there's a lot of lawmakers who say it's still not big enough. They're looking at what inflation is. They're saying that the number actually needs to be somewhere in the mid to high $800 billion range to keep up with all of the cost of living and the inflation costs that the military is going to have to deal with. So that's going to be the key fight going ahead, is just how big should this budget be? And that trickles down to all of the priorities within it. When you look at the Navy seeing a 5% increase in their defense budget, that's a big number. That's good news for the Navy. But the budget also includes getting rid of about 24 Navy ships. That's going to be a key fight. There's a lot of lawmakers who say we need to grow the fleet, not shrink it. The Air Force is seeing almost a 4% increase, but again, 150 aircraft, legacy aircraft, are going to be reduced, going to be decommissioned there. There's a lot of folks who say we need to have a larger Air Force. We shouldn't be getting rid of these legacy programs. Biden administration is focused more on putting the new money into research and development, looking at hypersonics, looking at microelectronics, and things like the military pay raise. There's a 4.6% pay raise in here. That's supposed to keep up with inflation and the cost of living. But again, some lawmakers are saying we might need even more given all the costs out there. Another big headline from this budget submission is the Space Force, which is going to see a pretty significant increase in its budget, up about 35%. You know, this is a service that a lot of people thought the Biden administration might scale back or even get rid of. This was really a Trump administration idea, but instead they've invested in it. They're going to be growing the number of Guardians in the Space Force over the next year and putting a lot more money into it. The Army and the Marine Corps, they're going to see much smaller increases, less than 2% for each of those. It's going to be a pretty big fight on Capitol Hill, especially as they try and draw down the number of soldiers and Marines in the service there. Where other money is going to go is towards things like the European Deterrence Initiative and the Indo-Pacific Deterrence Initiative. These are training and support programs that we've seen over the years to coordinate better with foreign militaries. Notably, about $300 million is going to be dedicated for Ukraine. This isn't going to be direct money that goes to Ukraine for equipment right now, but instead this kind of training and partnership idea that gets them ready for fights like we're seeing in Russia right now. On the personnel side, there's quite a few items for troops and their families. That 4.6% pay raise, that means about $1,300 more a year for junior enlisted troops, about $2,500 more for mid-career folks. That's a lot of money, but again, the question is whether or not that keeps up the rate of inflation and really helps those families keep up their quality of life. There's also a basic needs allowance to help families that are making less just make ends meet, and increases in the annual housing subsidy and other assorted benefits. Now, where it goes from here, we'll see the Congress get into the budget, spend the next few months really debating this, hopefully come to some sort of consensus before October 1st. That's the start of the new fiscal year. In recent years, Congress hasn't come close to meeting that deadline, and the DoD's had to work on just short-term extensions of the budget, which causes all sorts of program headaches. So with an election year coming up, hopefully this year they can get it done by that deadline.